Andrew Hoppin, Consensus Democrats. My day job is I've, for 6.5 years, run Hyla Fund Management. We're a crypto hedge fund management firm, about $100 million under management. But prior to that life, I used to be Obama-era tech for good political appointee in New York State. Worked with governments in the US at all levels and around the world to deploy basically open source, open data, open government technology. So those are my bona fides as a technologist before I went down the rabbit hole of decentralization. Are you doing slides, Paul? Okay, next slide, please. So I don't need to rehash the story for anybody here, but just to level set and set context, crypto wasn't partisan before FTX, by and large. And obviously since then, we've had very overt and explicit antagonistic rhetoric and policy reality from this administration and from a lot of Democratic politicians, and that leads naturally to the roster that you can see on Stand with Crypto about literally how many Republicans are supportive and how many Democrats are supportive, and there's this huge imbalance there. Next slide, please. So we have in this era not only that reality, but also the amplification of that through social media. I spend most of my day on crypto Twitter finding the teams and technologies that we're going to invest in as essentially venture capitalists in the space, and also my peers to learn what they're doing. And the political slant in crypto Twitter, if you think it's bad in this town, is 100 times worse. It is extreme. And it is partly algorithmically driven, but it's also partly reflexive. That rhetoric builds on itself and drives more partisanship in that context. And it's where a lot of our industry spends most of its time, gets most of its information and opinions. And then you add elections to the mix, and Trump leaning in hard to being pro-crypto explicitly, and you've got an incredible imbalance. Next slide. But critically, as Justin educated us about, and the Nakamoto project just on Monday came out with some other new data and research on Bitcoin ownership, that's not who the electorate is. The electorate is not extreme right or extreme left. It's actually extremely centrist. It's extremely balanced. Next slide. And so too are the researchers and the advocacy organizations that are actually working on these technologies and the difference that they can make in our society and our world. They're not left, they're not right, they're often nonpartisan, and where they are political, they are equally balanced on left and right. And I've worked with many of these organizations on the sort of 1.0 of this issue area, as I think of it, like internet freedom, net neutrality, inclusion, and the digital divide context of the original World Wide Web, et cetera. This technology domain is not left or right inherently, obviously. Next slide. So even the right wing agrees, from Tom Emmer to Ryan Selkis, they agree crypto shouldn't be partisan. It's actually not inherently fundamentally on the merits that way, nor will it be a good outcome if it goes that way, because most voters in this country self-identify as Democrats, not as Republicans if you look at raw numbers. And so if you have a technology domain and a policy domain where you are opposed to the majority of voters and your party is pro, but the other party that has more voters is opposed, it's not going to end well. Next slide. So there is a moment of opportunity here, and there is, in fact, real change, I believe. And that is thanks to the hard work of a lot of people in this room, and in particular, I'd say to the industry PACs, who've really put a huge stake in the ground around how powerful and important this industry is, and that's wonderful. But lest anybody think that this era of partisanship is over, let me read you a tweet from 10:13 this morning. David Bailey, Bitcoin conference, right? Kamala Harris will not be speaking at the Bitcoin conference. No surprise. What can she say to us when she's actively imprisoning developers, forcing our industry overseas, and attacking proof of work? It would have been a disaster for her. All eyes on Trump now. So we are still in a hyper-partisan era in this industry, if there was any doubt. Next slide. So Democrats do not today have a visible, organized voice in this political conversation. We have a lot of Democrats who are active and visible. We do not have an organized, self-identified, proudly of, by, and for Democrats voice. And this keeps more Democratic lawmakers from engaging because it doesn't feel like a safe space, and it keeps crypto more partisan than it needs to be on the merits. Next slide. So Consensus Democrats is designed to deal with this situation. It's designed, if we're successful, to take the Republican and all of Justin's data and copy-paste Democrat in there. Next slide. We have one message. Crypto is good for Democrats. It actually aligns with our values and our policy priorities if you look at it on the merits. And Democrats are good for crypto. Again, it's not going to come out well if you have a partisan policy area where the majority of the country is actually self-identifies as the other party. Next slide. So we identify and we arm authentic, credible messengers, Democrats, to carry that simple message. We're of, by, and for Democrats, and we'll empower these messengers to tell that story in their communities, in the press, on the Hill, and within the industry. Next slide. So what we're building is an online organizing hub to collect these stories and materials to educate and empower current and future messengers of this story. And we, in particular, are going to focus on telling stories in ways that the industry doesn't historically show a lot of talent at telling, frankly. And it's the best part of my day has been reconnecting with Cleve because she is doing that work. We want to amplify the work of people like Cleve and make it as big and widespread and effective as it can be. We're building a community of supporters. We are, at the end of the day, building a pro-crypto democratic coalition. Next slide. So when we do this, if we are successful, we will amplify the work of people like Cleve and also the Blockchain Association and everybody else that is already doing good work in this arena by shining a light on it from a democratic perspective. We will actually elect and educate more pro-crypto Democrats. And at the end of the day, all of that nets out to better support for pretty good policy for crypto. Next slide. So who we are briefly, I told you about me. My co-founder is a storyteller, basically, but he's done work from everybody from George Soros to Pete Peterson. And so it's one where we really want to lean in, telling stories as the anything but crypto bro version of crypto storytellers. We also have an incredible campaign and organizing grassroots team that has experience not only being chiefs of staff in Hill offices, but also national organizing directors of Democratic presidential campaigns and on and on. So we've got an amazing big tent bridge building team. Next slide. And what we've done so far is we've mapped the space. We've had conversations with dozens of key opinion leaders in the space, including many people in this room. More to go, but we've done a lot of that. As I said, we've recruited a great team. We've identified some pretty significant scale lists of people that we can reach out to start building this coalition, and we've circled our initial funding commitments. Next slide. And what we need, and what we would invite and be incredibly grateful for all of your help with, is we need these pro-crypto stories. We need these stories that will actually resonate with Democrats, that we can shine a light on. And we also need recruitment channels to reach Democrats. We need non-industry standard ways of reaching people that we can ultimately educate and enroll to create a bigger tent here. We need diverse funding sources. We don't just want industry money, we need non-industry money in order to be authentic and credible messengers to the biggest tent of Democrats. And then we need an exceptional board. We need a lot of people who do not look like me, and we want suggestions and offers of help in that area. Next slide. So that's us, Andrew at consensusdemocrats.com. If you'd like to help, thank you so much for your time. It's a total honor to be in a room of amazing people like this.